In order to move forward, I think it's important to understand where you are. I'm not going to restate the challenge of climate change. I think a number of the speakers earlier have actually done that, but I just want to sort of reflect on some of the challenges that we have as an industry. We're a highly fragmented industry where there's a few main contractors who are highly reliant on a large supply chain. The nature of the schemes that we have to be involved in are very, very diverse, and we are risk averse, largely because the impacts of failure can be so catastrophic. So there's a motivation to maintain the status quo rather than to innovate. And the impact of the decisions made into design will affect the build, the operation, the use, and the social impact of the people that are actually using the infrastructure. And this carbon whole life cost is seldom considered across the schemes. Therefore, if we're going to address these challenges, I think it's important to look back at where we can have the greatest leverage. Now, some of these slides may look quite familiar to some because I think a number of people have used them. So clearly, the largest impact can be had during the planning and the design phase. But in order to have this impact, it's so important to use the expertise of people further down the value chain as well. And secondly, if you look at the carbon which is created, the carbon in construction, as other people have said, is very, very important. But where we need to be tackling is the operational carbon and also the in-use carbon. In terms of innovation, there's many things I could talk about, and there have been some really good examples that have been given. I will actually talk about 4 of these. I'm actually going to skip retrofit, but I'll talk about construction, recycling, digital, and social. So in terms of construction, if we're going to optimise the material that we use in build, we need to have greater surety over the component parts, and this means having greater control over the production process. There are 2 disruptive technologies that we see, the first one being off-site manufacturing, and then secondly, on-site production automation. Off-site manufacturing has developed considerably over the recent years, and new companies are continually innovating within this space. And the use of modular construction where structures, M&E, fit out and finish is increasing, along with the quality of the works and the finishes that are being achieved. However, there's a limit to the amount of stuff you can actually do off-site because of challenges in logistics and also the economics of setting up of the off-site manufacturing. And we believe that there's further innovation that can be had around this area as well. Construction is a labour-intensive process, and the earlier speakers have actually alluded to some of the innovation in this space as well. And the quality of the work is very dependent on the individuals involved. And we anticipate the level of on-site production automation and control to increase as digital construction becomes a reality and the manufacturing technologies become available. In terms of recycling, as an industry, we produce about 30% of all the waste in the UK. This figure in itself is quite alarming, but so is the impact on the environment, but also the value of the waste which we can use. We believe there are 4 areas that are ripe for innovation, creating a circular economy for the construction industry. The first one is urban mining, which is basically enabling works and demolition. There is value in the material which is being scrapped. I think we've taken just about all the steel out of enabling and demolition, but there's an awful lot of material where the business models haven't actually been established in terms of the extraction, but also the brokering. The next one is surety of material being brought on site. If the designs are developed further and the correct material and quantity is ordered, the amount of waste can be significantly reduced. And advances in digital construction should go a long way into achieving this. The third one is handling of excess material. If excess material is available, you could imagine innovations like an eBay for construction equipment is a new business model which is waiting to happen. Clearly, we need to safeguard on the provenance of the material, otherwise we'll have everyone stealing stuff off the construction sites and trying to flog it as you do with rail. But it is a model that we definitely foresee. And the final one is the use of recycled materials. We're having higher quality materials produced, and the use of recycled elements and a culture where this is encouraged will actually help create the market. Digital. So the construction industry is just above agriculture in the digital adaptation league. Now, we've made some really big advances with sort of BIM, but there are also other areas where we can make advances in terms of so data in production, operation, and also the supply chain. I think the good news is, because of where we are in that league table, there is a certain level of adoption that we have, but there are lots and lots of examples from other industries, other adjacent industries that we can take, where we can learn these lessons, and then we can start to implement them far faster. This is a slide that I have sort of borrowed from a guy called Mark Bugh that some of you may know. He's the chairman of the BIM task force. And the size of the circles are sort of proxies for the impact that each one of the sort of stages can actually have. As an industry, I think we should feel proud of the progress that we've made with BIM level 1 and BIM level 2. The next stage of the journey is in BIM level 3, where the whole life cycle is considered, and then to BIM level 4, where it's all about the use. Now this links back to the earlier slides where we talk about the impact, and this is why BIM and a low carbon construction sector come hand in hand. Social. If we're to realise the potential and maximise the benefits that we have, the social implications need to be considered during the design phase. Otherwise, people simply will not adapt and use the schemes correctly, and all of that potential carbon impact is just going to be lost. This is one of my favourite slides. If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you've always got. Our industry is very conservative due to the risk and the impact of failure, and this will not change in the future, but the risk of doing nothing may very well exceed the other risks before long. This has resulted in the pace of innovation not being as fast as in other industries, but this means we have lots of benchmarks and leadings to learn on. We cannot wait for the carbon equivalent of FRS 102 accounting to be implemented. We need to be pragmatic, we need to recognise what we have, and also recognise that we haven't got time for full maturity. We have to use what we have. We also can't wait for lots of new standards to be adopted and developed around us. We need to use what we have in hand as well. And there's an irony that never seems to escape, which is these adaptations that we will need to implement if we don't secure a low carbon future, such as higher seawalls, higher wind loading in buildings, and having higher, greater resilience for flooding, are all carbon intensive in themselves, which actually makes the whole situation worse. So how can we change? The carrot or the stick? I truly believe we have to have rules and regulations to define and enshrine our values, but we have to have the mechanisms to drive and reward positive behaviour. This isn't only faster, it's more effective. In terms of the stick of regulation, it can be heavy-handed, it takes a long time to write, it's difficult to write, and as soon as it's enforced, there'll be another group of lawyers trying to find a way around it. But it does need to be in place if it's going to be a deterrent. I believe the carrot is far more effective, and there are three main carrots I would like to suggest to you. The first one, and a number of people have also alluded to this, which is basically us, the consensus of the industry, where if we agree that we're going to make a change, and this change is driven consistently through the supply chain, it will happen. We've proven this with health and safety, we can prove it with a low carbon future. Reputational pressure. If society look at the schemes that we're developing and they are appalled by the carbon impact of those, that will actually force a change in the industry. And the third one is money. This is a key factor in our industry, and the cost of capital, whether it's a single dwelling or a major project like High Speed 2, will have an impact, and it will also drive changes in the behaviour. And therefore, I believe simple financial levers can also help change this behaviour. For example, if clients with a carbon conscience instigate actions where you need to have some mitigation actions as part of the tenders are the cornerstone, that will soon start to actually change people's behaviours who actually want to tender on certain contracts. And secondly, perhaps the provision of favourable financing for low carbon schemes, where a better whole life CO2 projects are afforded the best interest rates. And as the schemes develop and the maturity increases and they go into operation and the actual CO2 is reconciled and the interest rates are adjusted accordingly, this way there's very real motivation to change behaviour and mitigate the impact of CO2 in the scheme. So in summary, we're going to have to be brave. We can't keep on doing what we've always done because we're going to get wet feet. We're going to have to embrace innovation. We're going to have to look left and right to other industries. We need to get the multidisciplinary teams involved earlier on within the schemes if a low carbon solution is actually going to be included in day one, and we need to look to the social and financial instruments to encourage positive behaviour and let this lead to a low carbon future. Thank you.